Graveyards are weird spaces. They're sort of very liminal and very underutilised. Yeah. In Victorian times, it used to be a day trip to go to a cemetery, and they were places that were much visited and much accepted as part of life, and death was quite common. Now death is less common compared to Victorian times. They tend to get abandoned, really. Although this one is fairly well looked after. I'm in St Andrew's graveyard, or church graveyard, in Preston, which is right by Ewley's farm. Obviously I'm having a sort of a slow day, so I did some shopping, checked out what's in Preston. There's a co-op and a spa. Not much, but there is gluten-free food here. It was like, wow, the high life in the co-op. But they're quite small, so I'm still going to go into Weymouth. But yeah, I saw this church in the distance, and it's a 14th century church, like one of the square, sort of castle-like ones, very grey. What the local stone is. I think it's slate, but yeah, it's that sort of very greyish colour. I don't think it's chalk, but you know. It's interesting that last night I saw chalk beaches, and below on that walk towards Lulworth, and a drawing, painting I did, the watercolour, and it's a grey. They are grey beaches. You expect them to be white, but they're actually a grey colour, sort of purpley grey. So yeah, I've drawn the church. I did 2 drawings. The one that'll probably be on this episode is the second one, and again with the Lyra. Again, Tim, with the Lyra pencil, Lyra crayon. But this time it's a mix of the two. Mix of the graphite. It's a drawing in graphite. Which of course doesn't dissolve, does slightly but not greatly, and then going over that with the water soluble. But I was doing something much more graphic this time. The first attempt was very sort of, I don't know, more sort of detailed. I always struggle with my drawing having something that's very sort of detail focused, and then I want to do something a bit more, especially with the shadows of this, a bit more graphic, a bit more solid, a bit more John Piper. Yes, back to John Piper again. Whenever I draw churches, there's always John Piper in the back of my mind, and this is that, with the very dark parts of it, and the trying to use the washers to sort of suggest the stone detail, but not do the, try and draw every stone, which I have done, and it's just like, it's tiresome, and I don't think it looks good. So yeah, no, I'm pretty proud of this one. And the noise you hear is the fact that the modern graveyards of modern times, the holiday homes, surround this place. They circle this place, and yeah, I was when I was walking up to Preston from Bowley's, I was saying hello or morning, like you do on the coastal path, and not a single person said hello back. Not or morning. I was just saying. I wasn't saying like hello, how are you? I was going, morning, nothing. And this is exactly as I find with holiday park people. They are dead zombies. They live in a graveyard. It's an ecological graveyard, and they spent 100 grand on a shed, on a posh shed. 80 grand on a posh shed, which they'll have for only about a decade or 5 to 10 years, and then they'll get sort of the holiday park will try and tear it down because it's too old, and it's just incredibly wasteful. And Tim does not like holiday parks, and this is partly because of the experience with John, with his 2 mobile homes, which had this happen to them. He didn't really look after them either, which wasn't great. But yeah, he had this sort of foreclosure thing of, oh, we have to upgrade it, or that wasn't maybe 10 years. It was more like 20 or 30. But it was like at least one of them wasn't too bad condition. It could have been repaired, and it's just wasteful. It's all like because they make profit from. They don't make hardly any profit from renting. What they make profit from is from a new one, and so they force, after about 10, 15, 20 years, the owners to, tear it down and build another one, which is incredibly wasteful. And as I say, they're cultural wastelands. I've stayed in holiday parks last time, the last 2 trips, and some are okay, but Durdledor's horrible. Some of them actually had divested themselves of their little tiny scraps of sort of camping land, which I said in the previous episode usually is the worst, the highest place, the place where no one ever wants to have a mobile home, or woods, or birds that shit on your tent, that kind of thing, things like that. But they don't plant enough trees in those places. There's no shade. I was walking up through one to get here, and I walked through several actually. And they are like cemeteries of the undead. Cultural cemeteries, and the people there, I think, are universally, like on the bus going to the park that's near Lees. So one of the ways to get to Lees is to take the bus to the park and then just walk the short distance. They're not friendly. They won't say hello. They won't. They won't. They know each other, but they won't say hello to anyone else. And it's weird because compared to the locals, the proper locals, like the people who gave me a lift last night, or the people visiting Lees, who will chat to you when you're washing up and stuff out, which is cool. There's a sort of very standoffish, I say snobbishness. They won't talk to you because you've got a rucksack and look scruffy. There's that, or I don't know you. And the thing is, it's not snobbishness from a class perspective, because it's quite often they are working class or some are middle class or pretend middle class, lower middle class, or halfpenny looking down on tuppence. That's those people. I find them very weird. Anyway, rant over. But you'll find a lot of holiday parks in this part of the world, caravan parks, mobile home parks, what you want to call them. And they're expensive to stay at if you're camping. Expensive to stay at if you want to if you want to rent one of the holiday homes. So usually they're about selling them. And they're not usually well. I could understand it if there was a decent shop and decent entertainment. It's usually a pub and a tiny shop at best. Sometimes just a tiny shop. And I went into a couple of them today, and they've got hardly anything in, and it's all like microwave meals and things that are no use for any campers, and tins and things like that, which is understandable given the clientele. But it's all nothing. I went into one and I asked for parmesan, and she looked at me like, "Oh, you're posh," and it was just like, parmesan is not posh. Aldi has parmesan now. It's not posh. But yes. As I said, my drawing has always been a struggle, but at full stop, because I hate pencil work. I have a real problem with, because my schoolwork was all in pencil, and I was constantly criticised for the way I draw. I never really liked drawing it. If I'd known about or had access to, I don't know if they existed then, they probably did, I think they've been around for a while, the llldrier crayons, or the water-soluble sort of drawing woody pencils, that kind of thing, I think I would have felt a lot different. But and also had someone who didn't treat teach drawing so badly, because my art education was... Oh, this is getting very, very angry. But my art education was in some senses good, but as in my early art education, it was not good, because they wanted you to draw like Raphael. They wanted to draw you with confident, flowing lines, This is a very academy approach to it. Not the modern sort of thing where, like, it's about mark making and the confidence of the mark, but you can make bold marks. You don't have to, defer to the past and try and do representation. You can do abstract marks. You can make, strong marks or gentle marks. It's about the control. A lot of the training now is about the mark making, the control of mark making, and less about ideological ideas of representation and, copying the old masters. But there was still some of that in definitely my GCSE and my A-level. And it got to a point where my drawing isn't like that. My drawing doesn't fit into that mould. I am closer to Giacometti if I'm using a pencil, very sort of scratchy. I used to get criticised the chicken scratch of my work. Rather than showing me Giacometti and go, well, that's not wrong, it was all like, no, you've got to draw like this. So I was forcing myself to try and draw like I can't draw. I can draw like that. I have drawn like that. I've got drawings in my portfolio, and more recently with carbon pencil, which I can draw. I can draw like that, more with pen, but it's not me in pencil. Pencil, it's either sort of bold strokes and with something like this with Lyra or the woody pencils, or it's more kind of, I would say, more structural or more abstract, more kind of blocking out areas and not so much about detail. I struggle with detail with pencil, but again, I have done it, but it doesn't fit with my style and who I am. I think the criticism, you can't do it. I'm not sure back then I could. I think I could, given the right medium. If I was working with pen, and I found early on in my A-levels, a bit later in my travels, that I could draw in pen, and that sort of seemed to work with the more defined things, and also some scratchiness as well, but it seemed to work better. Pencils tended to come up a bit of a mush, and me and pencils, very complicated, but I love these, partly because I'm a bit more confident with a brush generally. So I can sort of work. I like jumping between the two modes, because if I screw it up a bit in that, I can go, actually, I can then correct it in the other. So, but also you can, mix different techniques in one thing. So, anyway, I think this is probably going to be I don't know if it's the only podcast for today, but it probably will be, unless I do some more work and it deems worthy of podcasty. But no, I do recommend people going down to the nearest cemetery and drawing or church, and you'll find that there were incredible places in lockdown. They were wondrous places, because again, it's taboo. People think they're going to catch the death or something, or they've watched too many zombie movies and Barbara's going to get you, that sort of stuff. I don't know, it's a weird one. I don't know why people just don't go there, because they are wonderfully, well, apart from when you got a holiday park next to it, but the actual cemetery itself is wonderfully quiet, and there's no real there shouldn't be a hang up about it, really. Anyway, I'll speak to you soon.